what are the best decks in Master Duel post? I forgot the new set's name. What are the best Master Duel Yu-Gi-Oh decks post the new set? And today, I'm going to be basing these archetypes based on what the strength is going to be moving forward. Let's go ahead and start off with Branded. Branded actually did top in, well, when I mean top, it did get recognized as one of the best decks in Master Duel, being in the top ranked. I still think that this deck is incredibly good. It seems like this strategy doesn't have any signs of slowing down, even with Branded Fusion at 1 and other hits alike it in Master Duel. It just got that in a TCG, and I don't think it's going to make Branded a worse deck. To be honest, you guys, Branded players, I think we got to give it to you guys at some point in time. You guys are some of the most innovative players ever, always finding a way to use all of your lore cards to your fullest potential, right? Next, we have Exo Sisters, and unfortunately, guys, if you did spend all that money for Exo Sisters, it's probably time to put it on Xbox Cross Playoff. Now, if you guys didn't know, there's 5 different categories here. Top deck, really good, takes a good pilot, experimental. Xbox Cross Playoff is our favorite because these strategies are really good if you play on Xbox and you turn Cross Playoff, so you can only play Xbox players. And seeing that there's only like 7 of you guys, you could be top ranked, right? Okay, I'll stop. But seriously, the biggest problem with Exo Sister is that this deck is just not strong enough anymore. Power creep is definitely one of those things, and Exo Sister has really suffered from it. Memento, I actually want to put Memento a little bit higher than I'm going to put it, but Memento takes a good pilot, chat. Now, I want to know what you guys think about that, but the reason why Memento takes a good pilot is, first of all, this deck is complicated to play. I tried playing it. If you guys remember that video, go ahead and check it out. It was interesting me playing Memento. It's not easy. But the next thing, I do have belief for Memento because it's going to only get stronger. There are cards named Fiendsmith, which are really, really good. Once that comes out into Master Duel, I think in any limitation of the way, it's still going to make this deck better. And then there's still other cards, like more Memento support. You won't believe it. There's more that makes this deck even more consistent and even more powerful. I'm going to put it in takes a really good pilot because right now it doesn't have all of its support, but the right cards, it can be really good. Labyrinth, I think the biggest problem for Labyrinth is that a lot of people were playing those type of Eradicator, Epidemic, Virus, Stun type Labyrinth decks, try to floodgate your opponent as much as possible. And to be honest with you, those versions of the deck suck. But a good Labyrinth player does shine. The only problem is I'm putting it in experimental because the strategy still faces an uphill battle because of power creep. I gotta say, when Labyrinth is played correctly, it's one of the best interactive trap decks of all time. The only problem is most people try to find the most degenerate trap cards and use them to death. Where my simultaneous equation cannons at, Konami? Let me banish my opponent's field on their turn. That card is actually crazy. That may put Labyrinth either here or here, because simultaneous equation cannons is actually a ridiculous card. Master Hero Darklaw as heroes. I think heroes are experimental. Right now, one of the more powerful cards in the game is Nibiru the Primal Being. That card has been putting in a lot of work for us in our climbs, and we've seen it quite a few times, and I think it becomes incredibly hard for hero players to be able to withstand that, Maxi, and all of the other hand traps alike. But that and Maxi, it's kind of crazy because there is a way for this deck to play around it, but you can't play around both, right? It's almost impossible. Dark Magician. I'm going to put Dark Magician in Xbox Cross Playoff. Unfortunately, this deck's just not that good, to be honest. It's just not, guys. Don't even try. I think the best version, though, is the Magia version. So there you go. Like that having that Omni negation is pretty good. Red Dragon Archfiend, we're playing that. Chat wants me to play that in my ranked play, and I gotta say it's experimental. RDA is not a bad deck, but it's not a good deck by any stretch of the means, guys. The biggest problem with Red Dragon Archfiend is that it's so restrictive in a card game where the best strategies have no restrictions whatsoever. And that's pretty much the sum of parts for this deck. Same thing with Sortal. Incredibly power crept, even with Protos and the other cards alike that it has, like Battle on the Floor, still access to that. This deck's just not as good as people want to give it credit for. It's a solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck, and I want to say is probably one of the best budget decks you can get, but not one of the best decks, right? Atelier, thank you so much for the sub, big dog. I appreciate it. Blue Eyes is no better than Dark Magician. And we have Pearly and really good. I think Pearly takes a good pilot now. Pearly is not an easy deck to play, and I don't think it's ever been an easy deck to play. With all the hoops that you guys got to jump through with Pearly in Master Duel now, it's a lot harder. Now, this deck is, whenever you see it, it's like Mathmech. And I just realized I don't have Mathmech in here. Mathmech would be and takes a really good pilot, by the way, guys. It's just like Mathmech. It's a deck that if it goes first, you really don't want to see. But if you're going second, it's a lot easier to deal with, right? Sky Strikers, I would put Sky Strikers in. It takes a really good pilot. As much as we don't like to see this deck, it's one of those decks like Pearly and like some of the other strategies that just are really, really hard to deal with. I think Dinomorphia, oh, this one's tough. Dinomorphia is probably experimental. I think just the trap aspect. Right now in Yu-Gi-Oh, strategies are incredibly fast, right? So like, you get cooked too often, man. I be straight sick playing your trap deck and your opponent just comes out and cooks you. Hard loses to Yubel. Oh no, miss, you're right. It just gets cooked by so much. It's unfair. Snake Eyes. Now, pure Snake Eyes is obviously a dead deck. We have Fire King Snake Eyes, which I still think Fire King Snake Eyes is really good. I think Rescue Snake Eyes is also really good. Pure Snake Eyes, I guess I would put it in takes a really good pilot. So the reason why it's in takes a really good pilot is because you're almost doing yourself a disservice by not playing Snake Eyes one of these. Because of the limitations on Master Duel, it's just easier to play these, right? There's no reason why you should be playing pure Snake Eyes. And to be honest, I want to put it in Xbox crossplay off, but Snake Eyes at its current form is stronger than the Power Crept decks because it still has those one card combos and recoverability. We were playing this deck to Masters. It did really well. I will say it does take a good pilot. There were some times where I could have won games and I lost, but in every game that I had a matchup where the deck was better, you really get put to the test. Like, you really put your game knowledge to the test, and it's one of those decks where if you play well, it does well for you. Horus isn't even a deck, chat. Oh, Horus Stun. Okay, definitely. Experimental. I'm tripping, guys. I was tripping. I was like, Horus isn't even a deck. Who's playing Horus? Horus Stun. Experimental. Master Duel has done a really good job at stopping the stun aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? The deck needs more illusion support for Chimera. I agree. It's so close. It needs one more card. To be honest, when it comes to Voiceless Voice, couldn't you play Horus with FS Engine? What is FS Engine? Horus. What is it? Come on, guys. Stop abbreviating stuff. Fiendsmith. Fiendsmith doesn't exist in Master Duel right now. Right? Now, this deck is incredibly disappointing. I'm going to put it in really good, but I just want to say this deck's disappointing. And I think everybody can agree with this deck being underwhelming and disappointing in Master Duel. It's almost weird how disappointing it is. I think it's because a lot of people had an expectation for its expense. Like how Branded was really expensive. Like, you know, how Snake Eyes was expensive. This deck is equally expensive, but not as equally as good, which is kind of annoying. I'm not going to lie. To be honest, I would say that it's still good, but it's worse than all of these other strategies. I'd rather just play Centurion, which is cheaper, actually. I think Centurion's a top deck, and you guys can argue with your mom over this. The simplicity of Centurion is stupid. I love that the deck can play around Maxi. I love that the deck can summon Shooting Quasar Dragon, and that card's like really hard to deal with. It has so many cool interactions. This is probably the best deck in Master Duel, or one of the best decks in Master Duel. I think bar none that there's, well, never mind. There's a deck that could be argued better. Cosmic Blazar? There's so many of them, chat. There's so many. Help me. Help me. It's so many of them. But no, in all seriousness, this deck is really, really powerful because of Cosmic Blazar Dragon, and being able to synchro summon in the Chaos Angel on the opponent's turn using Bestial monsters. I really do like this deck. They just won't let me play it. Ancient Gear. Now, this is the deck that you guys love, absolutely, hands down. Don't argue with me. Argue with your mama. I think that I think that Ancient Gear is actually here. I'm coping. Ancient Gear is experimental. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I can tell you about Ancient Gear. Ancient Gear has not been good in the TCG at all. It's not good. The reasoning is because I was just about to say that, Mr. Taco Shark, is because Ancient Gear is Tenpai Dragons at home. It wins fast. It prevents your opponent from doing things. It makes OTKs. But if I remember correctly, a lot of the Ancient Gear cards right now are expensive. So it's going to be a very expensive deck. It doesn't really do enough. Skill drain is limited, so your plan B is turned around. Like, this deck is not great, but there have been strategies that didn't translate to the TCG that translated incredibly well in Master Duel. So I'm going to give it a benefit of a doubt and put it in an experimental. I think Solomon Great is experimental as well. This deck's kind of done. I ain't going to cap. I would put it in Xbox crossplay off if I thought it was as bad as these decks, guys. I'm not even going to cap. Like, it's not a great deck. It has a lot of problems. And we played Solomon Great to Masters. The biggest problem with Solomon Great was anytime we got Maxi, you pretty much auto scoop. Anytime you get nibbed, because you can't play for the nib combo. Like, if you play around the nib combo, your board isn't strong enough to win. So you kind of get stuck there, right? Where's Tier Limit? That's interesting. I would actually put Tier Limit as a top deck. I'm not even going to cap. Thank you for mentioning Where's Tier. Tier Limit is a top strategy. So we don't have a ranking for it, but I would put it in top deck. I think Tier is still one of the best of the best. Val Monica, we played this deck, and this deck is not, I'm not going to lie, this deck's pretty good. It probably is better than Xbox Crossplay Off, and it is getting more support. We know that for sure. But the support doesn't, like, it's good, but it's not good enough. I think a lot of people were turned off because it's a pendulum deck. But, I mean, I really can't say that because one of the top decks in our top 10 decks was a pendulum deck. So, it's just one of those strategies I think is really, really good going first, but going second, it struggles. I would say Yubel is the best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or in Master Duel. And the reason why is because while Yubel may not get any direct support, Varuja's Bringer of All Times is crazy good, guys. There's some other cards that are also ridiculously good for Yubel that we'll be getting. But more importantly, Yubel takes everything that we knew about Yu-Gi-Oh! And flips it on its head. And before times, we would summon the biggest monster to our side of the field. Nowadays, we summon little monsters and inflict damage to our opponent, taking advantage of their big monsters. The good thing about Yubel is that it has some really, really easy to manipulate weaknesses. Players not knowing how to play the deck because it's not easy to play. Triple Tactics Talent, Change of Heart, those cards are really good. Back row removal is crazy against this deck. So Yubel is not invincible, but it is one of those decks that's kind of crazy. I think that Raid Raptor, and I'm going to keep it so real with you guys, I'm going to put it in Xbox Crossplay Off. I don't even think that it's good enough to be experimental. And it sucks because I love Raid Raptors, guys. And you guys know I love Raid Raptors. problem with Raid Raptors is that you have this boss monster, right? And if you summon this boss monster, you win. But Yu-Gi-Oh, well, you actually don't win because Yubel does turn that all the way around, right? Just completely around. And that's another reason why I'm putting it in the Xbox crossplay off, is because its strength is literally a weakness against the best deck. So you summon the best monster in the game and you win, right? But the problem is your monster's only 4,000 attack, which means Access Code Talker typically clears it. It means that Underworld Goddess is licking its lips, right? It means that Yubel OTKs you. It's actually not hard for Yubel, I was gonna call this Manadium, Yubel, Centurion, Voiceless Voice, to put a monster over 4,000 attack on the field. It is not hard. It is not hard for this deck either. It's not hard for this deck. It's not hard. So your biggest strength is not really strong, and your weaknesses is all of the hand traps and any interruption, as well as going second. I think Raid Raptors are not good at all. Like, just don't waste your gems on it. Same with Dinos. Inconsistent mess, right? The 4K, no, the rank 13 goes to 5,300 for me. That's crazy. It ties an Access Code Talker. Like, and I'm not saying that that's it's not a bad thing, but it's not like, you know, Yubel doesn't kind of just do the thing, and you kind of just put yourself in a worse spot, right? And again, I think getting to Masters with Raid Raptor would be easier than getting to Masters with Dark Magician. But if we're going to talk about like the decks that are the easiest to climb with, it's probably not good enough, right? Paleozoic, I'm going to put it in Takes a Good Pilot. I think this deck is really annoying to deal with, and a lot of players just quit because of it. I think that Kashtira is really good. Kashtira is incredibly good. It's a nice soft counter to Yubel. It's a counter to Voiceless Voice. It's a soft counter, or could be pretty good against this deck because banishing for the extra deck. Light Sworns. Light Sworns. Ah! Where do I put Light Sworns? Light Sworns get some incredibly good support, guys. Crazy good. It makes the deck consistent. I will be probably playing Light Sworns. I'm going to start it off and Takes a Good Pilot. I don't think that it's going to be game breaking, but the fact that Light Sworn can make boards and end boards incredibly quick, I think is one of the biggest benefits for the deck. I think Light Sworn can be crazy. I'm going to put Light Sworn right here. I was wrong about this deck. Ice Barrier, summoning that card, the Lancia guy, is actually strong. And the card that makes your opponent discard your opponent, I think it's General Ryo, is also crazy strong. I think that this is deserving a spot and Takes a Good Pilot. I was wrong about this deck. It's not as strong as you guys may have hyped it up to be, but it is kind of crazy good. And Reika, I want to put Reika in crossplay off. So Ragnar Reika is literally just plants with more Reika, with more support. And plants themselves are already really hard to deal with in Master Duel. You just gave it more special summons to play into max. It doesn't fix the Master Duel problem, but that's what I think. I think that this pack is going to be underwhelming, to be honest with you guys. No decks to make themselves top contenders, but I can't wait to see what happens. Hopefully I'm wrong, and we get to see Light Sworn as a top tier contender. Let me know what you guys think about it down below in the comment section, and I'll catch you on the next one.